Hey folks, I wanted to just record a little intro to this kind of special episode that I'm going to be uploading here in a few minutes. This is episode that I recorded with Dr. Glenn Doyle and Kirby Brown of the Seek Safely organization. And it was a precursor to Seek Week, which was a really fun week of live episodes that they did just about a couple weeks ago. I'll put a link to the recordings of those in the show notes. Also, it's an announcement about our second annual Seek Safely Summit, which I have now moved from November 8th to January 10th, mostly because I just needed some more time to get everything in order. All the different guests that we have coming on, we're really excited about that. I hope you'll buy a ticket, support Seek Safely, support us to keep making this great content. And then also November 8th, we took that time we had scheduled originally for the summit, and Jean and I are going to be offering a live walkthrough of the Seek Safely Empowerment Compass, which is this really great tool they have created to help folks really create their own compass. So when they go looking for self-help work, they're really clear about what's right for them and maybe some of the red flags to watch out for. So I'd love to have you participate with those. Also, big announcement, we're going to make some changes. I'm going to turn off the ad feature on YouTube. It's a pain in the ass. And I found out that they are running ads I don't really like and are stupid. So I'm going to turn that feature off. And instead, I am going to turn on a simple membership model and really ask that if you like this content, if you want to support me to keep making it, it'd be great if you could hit that button. And I'm going to start out really low as like $2.99 a month or something. Just contribute that little bit to help us make these episodes and keep making this great content. And if we do that, then skip those stupid ads. Anyway, those are some announcements. Enjoy this episode. It was a really good conversation. It's not very often I listen to one that I'm in and think like, I really like that. This is one I really liked. Enjoy.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speaker and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seek Safely podcast. My name is Kirby Brown. I'm a little bit compromised today in my voice, but I'm very excited because we're here with our good friend Ann Peterson from Illuminate. She's also the host of Confronting the Line podcast. So hello, Confronting the Line listeners. I think we'll be on there too. So that's exciting. Right. Nice to be chatting with you as well. So I'm Kirby Brown from Seek Safely. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle.
Oh my gosh.
Ann Peterson from Illuminate. Hi, guys.
Hey.
I would like to go on record and state that, as best I can tell, a compromised Kirby Brown is better than most podcasters on their best day. So I will take.
I'll take it. Well, now maybe I have like that, like sexy podcaster voice going on because it's a little.
Hey, I've always said that like our best episodes are like late at night when you've had a glass of wine and you kind of get that late night podcaster voice going on.
Late night podcaster voice.
So we don't mind it, but we want to say thank you to Ann for joining us. Of course, Ann, you've been with us multiple times on the Seek Safely podcast. She's our go-to gal for. Oh my gosh, she's our go-to gal for everything cult recovery, coercive control recovery. Of course, Ann, a veteran of the good old Landmark Forum, formerly known as EST, former FOW, friend of Warner.
Yeah, definitely former.
FO. Former.
Not so much for me. Like, I wouldn't mind actually having a hang with Warner, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to hang with me anymore.
Anyway, so the reason why we wanted to have you on and kind of do this collaborative episode that'll also go out over the Confronting the Line airwaves is because we're heading into like our busy season here at Seek Safely. So you all know that throughout the year we're busy discussing ethics and accountability and scams and good and bad faith in the self-help world. That's, Gina and I do that all year, and we as an organization, Seek Safely as an organization does that all year. But here near the end of the year, things start ramping up. Of course, in October comes the anniversary of the Sweat Lodge tragedy that was the origin like ultimately the origin of Seek Safely, but of course the tragedy in which Kirby Brown and James Shore and Liz Newman lost their lives in Sedona. And so we commemorate that and really honor that by doing, the week of that anniversary. We do what's called Seek Week. And this used to be our annual fundraiser. Like once a year, we would have a big fundraiser at the end of the year. We called it the Kirby Jam because Kirby Brown liked to get down. And it was always
downtown Kirby Brown.
Downtown Kirby Brown, you bet. The action figure cousin, as she was known. And so once upon a time, the Kirby Jam was like a once a year fundraising thing for Seek Safely. And it would be in New York, and a lot of Browns and some other folks would get together, and we would have a party. But a couple of years ago, we decided to kind of expand this now in the world of live streams and Zoom and virtual stuff where we can, party with y'all instead of just ourselves. So we expanded this to Seek Week. And so actually, this should probably be airing about Seek Week, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be this first week of October, right? And what Seek Week is, it's our week long. We think of it as a fundraising campaign, but it's more than that. It's us at Seek providing a bunch of live stream content for our audience. Both, we're trying to raise some money, but we're also trying to give something back and say thank you. And so we make all the heavy hitters available, myself and Jean Brown and Christine Whelan and Virginia Brown and the entire crew. We do night after night of live stream content, and we have some specialized programs. And so we thought we would do this episode and kind of talk about Seek Week, just people to come on over and see what we're all about. And then we have even more stuff to talk about because about a month hence from Seek Week, we have the second annual Seek Safely Summit, yay! Which is it's kind of more so of Seek Week is our week long, a bunch of live streams that anybody can access. The Seek Summit is kind of a more involved event. It's it too is live streams, but they're they're deeper and they're paid to access. But it's really us and other people who are deeply invested in the field, who are experts in various aspects of the field in terms of not just self-help, but coercive control, recovery. And we get together and we talk about issues revolving around this world. So we thought we would hop on our podcast, tell you all about these things. Anne is our go-to gal, as I say. She knows how to put all this stuff together. Did I mention she worked for Landmark?
For a long time.
And knows how to produce an event.
For a long time. Maybe we can start with this. So you've been watching Seek Week for a couple of years now. What's your favorite of the live streams that we do? Like we do various things.
Definitely
what are your
the
favorites?
Geek Off. Like
the self-help Geek Off?
The self-help Geek Off. Actually, I enjoy the whole thing because your guys' byplay and banter is hilarious, and Dr. Christine, when she comes in and whatnot. But that Geek Week is pretty awesome. Also, I like the doctors. What's the one you guys are calling it this week? Doctors Ask the Docs.
Ask the Docs.
So yeah, I actually put a little. I'm putting a post out to my little, call it book club with people who've read I have a big Facebook group, people who've read my book, and we've been sort of deep diving into, let's say the misnomers of Landmark. Anyway, so I was asking them, I'm like, hey, you guys, what questions would you want to hear? But those are the Geek Off, and in fact, I've been working on trying to think of some things to try and stump you guys.
I like it.
So what the Self-Help Geek Off is, it's one of our nights of live streaming.
It'll be Tuesday night, October 7th.
Tuesday night, the 7th. We have a running joke at Seek Safely that Seek Safely was, so it started, the organization was started by the Brown family. And Kirby Brown was like the self-help enthusiast in the Brown family. So when this organization was then founded by her family members, let's just say they weren't a group of enthusiasts about self-help at the time for some strange reason. They were not all in
our mouths, yeah.
Had a bit of a sour taste in their mouth. And so part of the challenge of Seek Safely as an organization was bringing folks into the organization that not only kind of knew the landscape, but also knew the audience because we were the audience. So this is how I kind of became involved in Seek Safely. Everyone kind of knows my story, that the only reason I'm in psychology, actually the only reason I'm alive in some ways, is because I found self-help as a teenager and read way too many self-help books. but or maybe just enough self-help books, as it turns out, to keep me alive. But my point is, like, I've always thought of myself as a self-help person, as somebody who, even as I, see the dangers of the industry, I also see the potential. So for a minute, I was the sole self-help geek in Seek Safely, and then we brought Christine Whelan onto the board, who kind of had the same story. Not only is she one of the smartest people I know, solidifying the geek part. In fact, in terms of like
she
being
wrote a doctoral dissertation about self-help books.
She did. She
we
knows
were like,
the industry
great.
inside and out.
You'll fit right in here.
Right? So we are kind of the resident self-help geeks of Seek Safely, and so we devote a night to and whenever Christine and I would be in a conversation in these board meetings, we would bore all the other board members because we would just start rapping about the self-help industry. And, oh, yeah, you remember this book from 20 years ago? Oh, yeah, that reminds me of...
Exactly. So we figured we would just give you guys a night
to just geek out.
Jean, okay, here's the challenge. We got about a week and a half. We got to find the most obscure. Ooh, oh wait, never mind. I think I have one. Okay, I'm not gonna hint at it, but I'm gonna send it to you, Jean.
Send me some stuff.
I'll send you the most obscure self-help book. And doing, since my own waking up and deconstruction, as it were, through the malfeasance and destructive side of the Landmark organization, which is where I have the most experience, obviously. I mean, I've worked with a few gurus, but that's my deepest and longest experience. But so since I wrote my book, I've had so many people call me that, because Werner was like the rock star in early self-help era, and I worked directly with him for a long time. So anyway, I've had all these people call me and tell me stories about the early days, like the late 60s and the 70s, and kind of what, and that's like the beginning of the heyday. It's certainly not the beginning of self-help, but it's the beginning of kind of like the heyday, right? I mean, that's where it goes from being this kind of on the side sort of thing to it starts to get made popular and then mainstream, right? So we could say self-help was mainstream now, but before that it was just like weird, Madam, what's that one they're always talking about in Scientology, Madam whatever.
Madam
Chris can tell us.
Blavatsky.
Yeah, starts with a B.
Right.
And so obscure, like things like that, seances, is all witchy, but starts to kind of go mainstream. So I have a whole collection of books and just different things now that people have sent me that are just, some of them are wild.
Oh, you bet.
From that era.
We're at this really interesting moment, kind of vis-a-vis American self-help culture too. Like, so you mentioned the early days. And there's kind of there's this kind of woo Madame Blavatsky Christian Science thing going on in the early days of self-help, but it was also theosophy and these kinds of things. But it was also really entwined with a very American flavor of kind of evangelical Christianity. One of the big heavy hitters back in the day was Norma Vincent Peale, who was one of the famous ministers, Christian ministers of all time. We're kind of at this interesting point, having come almost full circle with that, because when you look at wellness culture, which is kind of self-help culture, is kind of bled into the broader wellness sphere and wellness influencers, we're kind of seeing that evangelical Christianity kind of run through it again. Because I was recently thinking about some of these early like we would think of them as evangelical, almost like tent preachers, but they were the early self-help guys.
Righteous gemstones.
You bet. So I think we're going to have some interesting conversations about that. It's also super interesting to look at some of the early self-help guys. I'm geeking out right now. If you look at some of the early self-help literature, a lot of it, like the backbone of it, really is kind of that, like God and country thing that we're seeing again. What's the thing now? Like, make America great again, right? Like the tone is very similar in some, for better or worse. It's very similar in some ways. So I think the Geek Off this year is going to be a super interesting.
Yeah, so definitely send me your ideas, and listeners, if you have thoughts too, you can always drop us a line. We'll have lots of posts on socials for the week, so you can let us know your ideas, what you want to hear the geeks geek off about. I'll be moderating, and hopefully I won't be coughing in the middle of it 2 weeks from now, so that'll be good.
I'll give you my magic wellness potion I was telling you about.
Thank you.
Before. It actually works.
You're going to manifest wellness, Jean. You can't let the engrams get the better of you.
That's true. I will be better. I can picture it. I will be better.
We're making it happen. We're manifesting it.
Yeah.
So we got the geek off. We got, Anne mentioned Ask the Docs, and again that's so the resident docs of our Seek Safely board is me and Dr. Whelan. And this is kind of different. We're not just rapping about self-help, but Christine Whelan is an educator. She's a college professor. She studies this stuff from academic point of view, along with a lot of other
the happiness and purpose professor.
And purpose professor,
which is the
yes.
Best. Yeah.
Depending on which school she's at the moment. She's either the happiness professor or the purpose professor. And of course, I'm a clinical psychologist. And so Ask the Docs, you don't even have to keep it on the subject of self-help if you don't want to. It's kind of like a Reddit Ask Us Anything. And we will be happy to rap about whatever you have to ask us. So we got a night of geeking off, and we have a night of just kind of rapping about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This year is kind of interesting too. We decided to add a night. We have been trying to not collapse the focus around Sedona and James Arthur Ray. Okay, it was like maybe 15 minutes in before I mentioned James Arthur Ray.
Can you imagine what would happen
on this episode of the Seek Safely podcast?
Like, really goes down. We should say when, because it probably is more a matter of when rather than if. But
we're cooked, man.
Hello.
Everything's like, well, we're building this house. We'll just chitter chatter while we wait for Dr. Doyle to come back. But the whole we're building this house, and I keep telling them, I'm like, this has to be off grid able. means everything. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right, yeah, no, I'm like, all of a sudden my brain's like popping with all kinds of like geeky stuff that
That's
I
good.
can.
Send
that
me
I
all
can,
your geek ideas. I
give
did
you.
too. I started writing a bunch of things down. I need to spend a little time thinking about it.
Yeah, because I think that, it's interesting that Glenn was bringing up the thing about it kind of, the whole self-help thing seems a little cyclical. I guess I love history, so I'm always like geeking out on history. And the more you study history, the more circular it seems things are. Mm-hmm. That's not going in a straight line. We're going in circles and kind of circles up. Like I always think of it as a spiral up. By up, I mean a little bit more conscious, a little bit more evolved, a little bit more nuanced. Mm-hmm. But, when people really turn to self-help is when things are chaotic and when things are stressful and when things are confusing and when we feel uncertain, right? So, because our brain's like freaking out, all our survival instincts are like going off. So that's when we get conspiratorial, all these things. So all this stuff's really up right now, just in the discourse, especially here in the United States, but I think worldwide, like everywhere, people are just going, what the heck is going on here? And, that's the time when people start looking for answers. And whenever they start looking for answers, that's when we start to get some kooky answers or people who want to make some money or exploit or take advantage of that thirst, that need. And, why I'm so passionate about the Seek Safely movement and organization, and literally have reconstructed my business to be an expression of that. But it's one, because it gave me a way to stay connected to what I loved. I started participating in leading, I call it transformational methodologies or whatnot when I was 27 years old. I'm about to, in a week, I'm turning 57. So that's 30 years. And I didn't stay in that for 30 years because it was all bad. In fact, it was mostly good, honestly.
Yeah.
And that was part of why when I started finding out about the harmful stuff, it was so hard. Like, it's been really shocking and really challenging to face that this thing that was so helpful and seemed so good could be weaponized. That's really been a huge awakening for me. So that self-help can be weaponized was like really, that's just been a wild thing to me. And, even when I hear your mom talk about, she went to James Arthur Ray stuff with Kirby and, she's, your parents are therapists and social workers and, highly educated in the world of self-help in that way, therapeutic help. And, I'm pretty sure they didn't see that coming, they didn't see that danger either. So that's the first thing. And it's kind of tough to wake up to that it really can be harmful. But we're seeing that. And so what I love about Seek is y'all are the ones that are out there talking about, okay, we got it. It can be harmful, but it's also helpful. So how do we just be smarter? How do we be smarter consumers? How do we be better practitioners? How do we be safe seekers? I mean, I love the whole thing, everything about it. And for me, it gave me like, and your mom calls it my redemption, which is a little bit of that. I'll take that. But it's more than that. It's more like a way to express what I always loved about making a difference and helping people. Because literally I was looking at, before I went to work for Landmark, I was selling building supplies, which by the way, I loved, just so everybody knows, that was a super fun career, but not one that I was looking to go back to. So when I got introduced to you guys, I was like, whoa, there are people out there that recognize there's real value that's important here, and it fills a gap, and it fills places that doesn't work. And, not everybody has access to therapy and whatnot, and we need lots of different approaches for people to evolve and whatnot. And we assume it's safe because it's about good things like evolving, being better. So we just all sort of assume it's safe. And unfortunately, you don't find out until it's kind of too late that it's not always safe, and that there are predators that will have it not be safe. Yeah, we're going to re-cancel. Okay, Dr. Glenn's back.
I mentioned James Arthur Ray, and my Wi-Fi immediately quit.
Yeah.
He's a ghost now. Like, you might want to be careful. He might have bigger powers now than he did when he was here.
He's kind of like
Be haunted.
Like Obi-Wan, like strike me down and I'll become more powerful than you ever imagined. I think James just made us. But I was asking James for years to be on the podcast, and he always ignored me. But maybe now, maybe that's what just happened. So sorry about that.
Maybe Ghost James has more courage than.
But that was all set up because y'all are you're gonna do one of the live casts during the week about life for Seek after James too, right?
Yeah. Well, it occurred to us that we only really had this opportunity once. Of course, James passed away right at the beginning of the year, right in January, I think, right? And Gene issued a really great statement around that, and we've kind of within the org, we've kind of been talking about. We did an episode of the podcast about kind of how this feels and what this means, and we figured, gosh, it's the end of the year. Seek Week always provides us an opportunity to kind of recap and look back on what's been important this year, and I mean, this is something significant that happened. So we're going to devote a night to members of the Brown family. We're going to have Gene on and our founder, Ginny, and just kind of talk about what this experience has been like, but also kind of what going forward. Anne, I know you like to think and talk a lot about the future of the Seek Safely movement. But this conversation is really kind of a kickoff of so what does Seek look like going forward in a world without James Arthur Ray? Like our org was never really centered around James. Like it was never really, that like he provided the impetus. But this is an org that needed to exist anyway.
That's right.
So it's not as if we need James to function. However, it's it's a moment. It's one of these moments where we tap the brake and reflect.
Well, it was interesting when it was either you or Christine, we were having a Seek board meeting because we are a C3 nonprofit organization, so we do have regular board meetings. So we were having a board meeting planning for Seek Safely, for Seek Week, and I don't remember who it was that mentioned, oh yeah, we could talk about during Seek Week the fact that James Ray died, and I was like, oh yeah, like I kind of had forgotten that he had died.
You bet.
Not that it wasn't sort of significant personally, but I think that from the beginning we always saw Seek's mission as much, much bigger and much beyond this one guy who was, a shitty guru. Right. It was always much more than that. So to me, like, his death did not put any dent whatsoever in the mission of Seek Safely, to the point where I just, it's not like I was thinking about him every day,
Well,
And I'm not thinking about it now, really, so it was just interesting.
You're touching on something, though, that because everybody, they want to talk to me about Werner, because, I knew Werner, I worked with Werner. I actually like Werner. Believe it or not, still like Werner. And I have some empathy for Werner. I have some compassion for Werner. I have some anger at Werner. I have like complicated feelings about Werner, right? But the biggest thing to me, and since my book came out, where I just really describe finding out how abusive he was and, how much this source, literally source of transformation, wasn't a very good living example of it. And that really that made me start to go, wait a minute, what's going on here? Now, mostly entirely with the organization. Then since my book came out, I've had hundreds of people come to me, former staff and program leaders, with their stories of harm. And that was there's a whole other book. I will get to writing it at some point, telling that story, because that has been actually more intense than even finding out about the harms that Werner was causing to this handful of people that I worked with and loved and, wanted to protect. Because Landmark, in their heyday, had between 400 and 600 staff and program leaders. And that organization hurts people that work for it, and hands down. And so one of the things I keep coming to now is, like, everybody wants to talk to me about Werner, and I'm like, Werner's not really the problem. The institutionalized version of Werner is a way bigger problem than Werner. Werner's a guy. Right. He's a guy. I think he's 90. He's hanging on. He's, as far as I'm concerned, go with God. Like that. And we can learn from him still. It would be absolutely stunning and miraculous if he was a demonstration of the work he taught and came out and said, you know what, I want to be authentic about where I've been inauthentic. That's Landmark language. All my Landmark people know what I'm talking about. So, or as we used to coach people, I've been such a fool. And just get honest about where you have caused harm and deal with the impact. I mean, that's at the heart of the Landmark teachings. That's not bad teachings. That's good stuff. But if we make the harms about those leaders, it's too easy to dismiss. It's too easy because, see, they leave. They leave the planet, they leave the scene, they leave the organization. Yeah. Werner did that, right? So in 1990, when he was getting so much bad press, I mean, I have a file now of literally hundreds of media articles about people experiencing damage in what at that time was the forum. So it was S training until like 1982, I think, 82, 83, it becomes... And part of that was because EST was waning, but they also kind of were having some problems. Not a lot of problems. The EST training was miraculous for a lot of people, no doubt, but it also had some problems. It was causing problems, and there were some harms. So, then they create the forum and this evolution, and the forum creates miraculous things for people, except for some. There's no real studies about this. First of all, we can't go back and study something in the past very well, but just going by the lawsuits and the personal testimony, that's estimated somewhere, between 5 and as high as 20% of people that participate in those large group awareness trainings experience some level of harm.
Sure.
I think depending on where you cut the harm line, it's different. But just the point I want to make is, like, if we make it about James, or we make it about Werner, or we make it about L. Ron, or we make it about Tony Robbins, or we make it around, these guys, they're interesting to study, they're interesting to learn from, but they are not the point. That's the point. Yeah. That's what starts to make it dangerous anyway, is we make, I'm reading this great book right now from a Landmark and longtime S graduate who also happened to work with Ram Dass and about 18 other spiritual teachers and leaders. This book is hilarious. I'm going to snap a picture of it. Glenn, you and Christine should definitely have this one on your shelf.
Yeah.
And we should maybe talk about having Eliezer on all of our pods, because he's just, first of all, he's totally hilarious, but he's experienced a lot of it, and pretty clear-eyed. So I think we're ready. I think we're grown up enough to start having a more nuanced conversation about the self-help world. And to me, that's what Seek Safely represents. And that's what, when I first met Ginny, I said, and she was telling me how she was kind of tired of talking about the origin story, the death of her daughter. Like that does get old, folks.
Of course. No, yeah. Of course.
And, talking about our trauma does get old. Or talking about our pain gets old. And I said to her, well, I think we're ready for Seeking Safely to be a movement, a demand. And I've been, working with y'all to redo the website. It'll be launched by Seek Week. So we're going to debut all kinds of stuff in this fall fundraising season. We're debuting a bunch. You got a new website. We're Seek Week, the summit, and we really are going, like, everybody buy tickets, because we're looking to helps raise money to support the organization, support the legal advocacy work and all the great things. But also, we do want to get back to those live events. We want to have some live events where people who are in this post-cult world can start to come together and really talk about solutions. And that's going to be the theme, right, of our summit. But to me, that's what Seek really represents, is the idea of solutions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we, it's kind of like our public radio fundraising season. We go the whole year providing things like our podcast. We don't have any commercials in our podcast. I will say maybe one day we will. I'm not going to promise we're never going to have ads, but right now we don't. We bring this to you in large part because we feel like what we share is important information for people. We don't want to put up a lot of cost barriers for people to access this information and think about these issues that we bring up. But it does cost money to have a podcast, to have websites, and, to run events. So it's just this one time a year. And I think we do it in a very fun way, that we're asking you for money, but still bringing you interesting conversations and interesting voices. And so, all of the events, the geeks, the docs, and then looking ahead to the summit, one of the things I think that you have really brought to us, Anne, in our collaboration, you've really helped us connect with people in the industry itself, which has always been a goal. It's kind of one of the pillars of Seek, to not just be talking to consumers. That's probably our main audience, but we also want to talk to people within the industry. Because as we're saying, it's not just about the big name gurus. It's about the industry itself, and it's about, the marketing practices that everybody learns or the way to do it. It's about, how you talk to people and influence people. Like, all of these things are pretty consistent in a lot of the self-help, and they're potentially harmful. So we need to talk to people on the inside so that we can, kind of create change from within.
Well,
so that's what I think.
If y'all haven't listened to the Seek Safely episode, I don't know which season it's in, but just find the one that's about the manosphere, just so you can hear.
That's one of Jean's favorites.
It's one of my favorites. It was hilarious. Well, because you brought in how these tactics that we think of in these culty, kind of environments or groups, but they're everywhere now. They're in our politics, they're in our it's the same tactics. Yeah. The same tactics that are being used to get me to buy that face cream are the same ones that, people are, high control groups, disingenuous groups are doing to bring in customers. And, it's tricky. It's tricky. I get it. It's so hard because, the people who have something really valuable to give, we're struggling. That's part of what my Illuminate platform is about. I'm like, look, there has to be a way if we worked, I believe in collaboration, like pretty much my obsession and passion. So that if we collaborate together, that we can find a way that is not employing these kind of yucky tactics to get people to buy. So, we did a couple of pilot safe practitioner workshops, just really with a bunch of people inside the self-help world and the wellness world, looking at how do we actually practice the promise, the Seek Safely promise. What does that actually look like in customer service policies, on websites, in our marketing? And I learned so much in that myself. And so now I'm building a platform that's going to be a demonstration. That's my commitment, is that it's a demonstration of we can make great ideas and, authentic, practitioners that really have something that they want to offer because they want to help people. We can make it available, and I will eventually write the book I meant to write, the one I started out to write until my publisher told me I had to write this other one first, which is how to not be a cult leader. But one of the things is to have a posse that you empower to call you out, and that you can check in with, that are not in, you don't have the same incentives, because you can't have the same incentives. I had my resident transformational methodologies expert guy. He's a former S trainer, forum leader, but he's like jumped into the Seek Safely movement big time.
Nice.
He's now read more books than me. He's read them all. Like, if A Little Bit Culty's done an episode on it, he's probably read it. Right. So it's really impressive I always tell him he's the most like conscious, woke, old white guy I've ever met. But He said this great thing the other day. We did an episode just talking about the role of transformational methodologies in organizational consulting, which is a much, much safer place for it. The more I've studied it, we can do a separate episode about it. It's really interesting how it's very different in that environment than it is in a one-to-one or personal environment. But he said this great thing. He said, look, if you sell hammers, everything's a nail. And there's no amount of being a good person is going to have you not fall into the influence of that if you're a practitioner.
Yeah.
And especially if you're excited about your product, everybody's going to needs that product. I have products like that myself. I say I'm in the cult Apple. Don't ever ask me for tech advice because I'm only going to just tell you to get an Apple. So anyway, so this is a big, big conversation. So I'm excited for this. I call it fall fundraising for Seek because I think we're moving into a new era, and I've weed us because I basically showed up and said, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere and I'm not a freak. Your mother let me stay in your house. It was amazing. We can do this. We can do this better. We can make useful ideas available and be safer. I always say safe and ethical, but I realized the other day it doesn't really work well in the written form. But the truth is it's about being safer and more ethical because there's probably always more to go. We'll probably keep learning and learning and learning. That'll be another chapter in how to not be a cult leader.
Well, I always say the twin pillars are ethics and accountability, right? Because there's nothing that can guarantee safety. Like you can run the most ethical, accountable operation and somebody still might get hurt. And that's something that I think is really important to acknowledge, that we're not looking for perfect, like a guarantee of safety. Like we're realistic enough to know that that's not a thing. What we are looking for is ethics, transparency, and accountability in a field that has notoriously shunned all three, right?
Well, and they have this whole weirdo thing. To me, it all lands in the 100% responsibility bullshit bucket. That's what I call it. Because that gets weaponized a lot in the sense that it's like, okay, Glenn, here's your release form. Here's your da-da. And never mind that I probably didn't tell you, because really I've worked with a lot of practitioners, even good ones and good intended ones, when they were doing the Safe Practitioner Workshop, realized that there was a bunch about their workshops they wasn't necessarily upfront or being told. So to have informed consent, you have to start with the informed part.
Oh, yes. Well, and that's conceptualized often as a feature, not a glitch, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the reasons why, just to take James as an example, hopefully I don't get kicked off the internet again. Just to take James as an example, one of the reasons, he said it outright. He said one of the reasons why we take secrecy around the event so seriously is because like part of the allure of the event was you didn't know what was going to happen and it was going to be a shock to your system, and that was again conceptualized as a good thing. Right. But it gets in the way of informed consent. Like I as a therapist could not get away with like, okay, you're going to come in, I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen behind this closed door, right? It's going to be awesome, but I can't tell you exactly what happened. No, that's like it.
And I think that's also an aspect of part of what they're doing deliberately is that whole idea of, that we talked about with John Hunter, where you're kind of inducing these awe experiences.
Yes.
It's more exciting when it's a surprise.
100%. You bet.
And so it leaves you, the customer, having had this manufactured experience of something that was incredible and life-changing.
You bet.
And that's what, causes the addiction, where then, like Anne, you were saying, you have that enthusiasm for it so strongly and so deeply that you're gonna build your whole life around this, and you think everybody needs to have this experience. So yeah, this is all part of that effort. And I think it's, people who get into this business are told, not exactly so explicitly, but they're told that this is what you're supposed to do in order to be successful. You have to, find these ways of marketing and selling like this.
Well, that's really kind. It's actually worse than that. It's really worse than that. Here's what I'm saying. The people, I promise you, the forum leaders, I remember saying to somebody one time high up in Landmark, I'm like, I think these are LGATs. Oh, no, they're not. But I'm telling you guys, I could have given that person truth serum or whatever, and they would go to the death that no, they're not, because they don't know what that is.
They invented them. They invented them.
No, I know, but they didn't invent them. Right. Werner invented them, and their job is to be Werner in the world. Cult alert, cult alert. So that's what makes it culty. That's what had me come out. Like, I really wish I would have named my book and said, "Is this a cult?" Say, wait, am I in a cult? Like, so, because that's really what my book is. It's me asking myself that question and then reflecting back on just my time with Werner and then how that interplayed with Landmark. But little did I know, like, what I found out since my book came out, I thought there really was this separation between them, way more than there actually is. There's never been any real separation, not in the way that we thought. So, but the leaders don't know, and they're not trauma informed. I got probably the highest level of what could be considered trauma informed in Landmark, because I worked in a particular division that kind of moved in a very different way and worked on a different basis. We weren't there to intervene in people's reality and all that. We were really there to listen and provide a container for people to find whatever there was for them to find for themselves, which is much more therapeutic. I now know. I've learned enough about cognitive behavioral therapy to become like, oh my God, I've been doing cognitive behavioral therapy for 20 years. I had no idea that that's what I was doing.
Right.
None.
Right.
So, it's then really up to each practitioner, each leader, and their morals and their ethics and their intentions. But people with the greatest morals, the best intentions, and best ethics they know how to produce are still going to slip into the mud if they don't know what the mud looks like.
Yeah.
So that's my thing, is like, they don't know what they're teaching. And in a group like Landmark, who really does believe that everything that Werner came up with is unique, not everything, but most of it's unique and original, although now they have kind of modified that a little bit. The party line is now, and this is what I used to say when I was in the party, but it wasn't like everything was unique, but he put it together in a unique way. That's kind of true, sort of, kind of. But the thing is, and I've spent a lot of time with Werner, and one of the things I'm on Werner's side about is the way a lot of those leaders lead what Werner thought up. They don't even know what Werner was talking about.
Sure.
Let alone where what Werner got, what he was talking about, came from, and the fuller picture, the fuller story. And to me, that's the biggest damage of groups like Landmark, is that the leaders don't really know what they're leading, and they're not knowing because they're willfully trying to not know. No, they're working 80, 90 hours a week. They're under massive pressure to produce results, and they're not allowed to study really outside other than what's given to them. So they do become very disconnected from the world, from their spiritual communities, from their family, just because, one, you do fall into the graduate, not graduate world. Pretty soon you can't talk to not graduates because they don't understand what you're talking about. But two, you just simply don't have time or energy. Right. If you're working 90 hours a week plus, no vacations, no whatever. I mean, you go on vacation, but they're going to call you 10 times, or you're so exhausted you can't even think. Right. Then you're not going to learn. So it's a lot, what's going on in that world is a lot more insidious than we think.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot more I actually think most of the damage is unintentional. Oh, sure. Like unintentional, like it's not like somebody sitting in a dark room going, let's did it.
Yeah.
That's not how it happens. I don't even think Werner's doing that. I think Werner is genuinely interested in how to make people perform better. I've spent a lot of time with a guy around tables. Like he's like a dog with a bone. Like he gets rabid for the ideas, and he's super into it. And he's sitting around it. What people don't realize is he's almost always sitting around a table with 4 or 5, 6, 7, 10 other academics or leaders or whatnot, and they're coming up with all this stuff, and then it gets his name stamped on it.
Oh, you bet.
And he definitely adds a flavor and a spice that's Werner, just like James Arthur Ray did, right? He had the James spice, but you can't, even if you take that spice out, you still got the stew, and it still might be poisoning you.
Oh, big time. And that's the thing. I even give James himself, I even give him the kind of credit to the extent that, I don't think he thought he was sitting around, how can I take advantage of people? I don't think he did. I think this is something I noticed the more familiar I got with him, because, the only reason I know anybody here, the Browns, anybody, is because I was a fan. And I read his early work, and I liked it. And I connected with him, on Facebook, kind of when he was his brother who's running his Facebook account at the time because he was in prison. But that's kind of how I got to know the very little that I actually knew James. I corresponded a little bit when he came out of prison. And no, Something I noticed about him was, because I had kind of this borderline encyclopedic knowledge of self-help stuff, I don't even think James understood the stuff that he was teaching and kind of the roots of it and the stuff. Like I could see his material and say, oh yeah, he got that from here and he got that from there. But I don't think he thought that. I don't think he thought, I'm stealing this and I'm adapting this and whatever. I truly think he thought he was something. He had something going on. And I think he thought he was the kind of narcissist, I think, that he thought is like, yeah, man, I've got the answer. But I give L. Ron that same benefit of the doubt. Like everybody who knew L. Ron Hubbard used to say, like, no, man, he bought it. Like, he was a true believer. He was doing auditing on tomatoes. Like, he really thought that Dianetics.
I met a guy.
I think most people are genuinely thinking that they're doing good things, especially the people who get pulled in. But do you not think that some of the people at the top are just trying to make a lot of money?
Oh, you bet.
Or even if they first got in it to do quote-unquote good work, eventually they just want to make as much money as possible.
Oh, eventually.
And so they know
absolutely.
that they're manipulating people to buy.
I think so first of all, I just listened to Vicente's last episode with, I can't think of the guy's name, who has kind of a little bit of a more nuanced cut on narcissism. And he was saying, I'll have to look up his name so we get it, so I want to give him credit. That's another thing, how to not be a cult leader. Give credit to the people you learned the idea from. So
We'll put it in the show notes.
he was talking about grandiosity. That it's not necessarily disassociation always, right? But there's this kind of sense of grandiosity. And I really resonated with that because Warner's not the only one I've worked with. Yoga Man, you know, I don't name him because he sues everybody who names him. Yeah. But that, you know, there is like this inflated sense of I have something. It gets very conflated with the ego structure, right? So they feel that, they believe that. I mean, Glenn, you're the psychologist here, so you know what I'm talking about. But then there is a point where I think they kind of divorce themselves from the whole thing, and they're just spending the money. They're spending the money, riding in the planes, right? And look, I've been there. I have been there. I got to, traveling and working with Warner. Ed and I talk about this a lot because he kind of had my job with Warner, similar job in the 80s. What I did in the 2000s. And so we compare notes a lot. And look, I was staying in these gorgeous suites in the Ritz-Carlton and, traveling around. And of course, because I'm Warner adjacent, I've got all these like really interesting, fascinating people that I would never have access to or never talked to or never gotten to know. I remember sitting around the table with Mike Jensen one time, who is a top well-known economist. He's passed away now. Well-known economist, Harvard professor, semi-famous in his own right. And, he's telling me I got really educated. He goes, where'd you go to college, whatever? I'm like, I didn't, I dropped out in the 9th grade. And he's like, well, you sure as hell got educated somewhere. And I said, yeah, I got privileged. I got the opportunity to sit around tables with people like you and be in these kind of conversations. And I read a lot and listen a lot and like that. But I think I can just see how that takes over a person. I saw it happen with Warner from 2012 when I hosted the very first event with him that I hosted. He was way more kind of grounded and whatnot, but then as he got more and more time back in front of his landmark audience, which really is his sycophantry audience, and I facilitated that. That was my events. That was the place where you got to be in the room with the Warner Earhart for the first time in 30 years. And I saw Warner become a worser and worser version of himself the more he was in that space. So I think it's more organic than we try to relate to it. We try to make it black and white, and we try to make it about these people. That's why I think it's a problem. I think anybody could become some version of a Warner Earhart or James Ray or whatever if given enough power, and attention is power. I'm about to write an article for our Illuminate newsletter about this. Like, the ultimate power that we give people is our attention. And it corrupts. It's corrosive.
It is. And you made a point a few minutes ago about if you're going to be the head of or the face of an organization, you need people around you who that the incentives are not the same, right? And what occurs to me too is I kind of run in crowds of arguable influencers, right? Arguably, I'm an influencer.
You influence me. I love your Instagram.
Thank you.
I've been in therapy with Dr. Doyle Says for years.
Oh, it's not therapy. It's not therapy. Instagram is not therapy. But thank you. But my point is, like, I know folks who started their social media presence and started to kind of get popular and then realized there was the opportunity to earn money, maybe even a living from it. And so they made that their thing. Now, I've never done that. Like my income comes from, I'm a working psychotherapist. Like, I have a practice. And that's where the overwhelming majority of any money I make comes from. And consequently, I'm free to post on social media whatever I want. Like and by the way, I do. Like everyone knows that. I think I probably discussed this even on this podcast, that where my heart really is, with the content that I really like to post, is actually with trauma-informed addiction work. But what we found is that whenever I post about trauma stuff, the response is really great. Whenever I post about addiction, I get maybe 25 to 50% of the response rate. Now, that doesn't stop me, because my income is not tied to my social media presence. But I think when you get folks where the incentive to make a living is conflated with the incentive to post popular things, you run into a problem. And I know people who have this problem where they're like, this might not be really where my heart is, or where I want to, what my audience needs to hear even. However, God, I got to make this month's check.
Or even what I believe.
Yes.
I mean, even what I believe, we're in the midst, I've refused to wade into the whole, what I call CK mosh pit that has been the last few weeks. But influencers, and you guys have talked about this on this show a bit in the last season. You've done some really great episodes, actually, kind of getting into sort of the AI and the algorithms, and it incentivizes malfeasance. It incentivizes bad behavior, and everybody's out here. We're just trying to survive, and this is a problem. This is, folks, why you gotta tune into Seek Week, come to the summit, become a regular contributor to the Seek Safely, basically so they don't have to do all this sleazy stuff to stay alive. That's what we're saying. Because we've had this conversation before. It's like, wow, and I'm having that with Illuminate, and I'm banking in a lot of money. Like, I've invested a lot of money already, and we're just getting started, but I'm banking on that we will be able to create a viable platform that provides enough sustenance for the people who manage it and maintain it and provide content for it to have a life that works. I have a big theory about enoughness. What's your enough number? Not your more number, not your conquer the world number. Forget all that shit. What's your enough number?
Right.
And that, when enough becomes enough, we're going to start to see a really different world. And then we have to start thinking of ways to provide that. And that's for me why I'm so passionate about the Seek Safely stuff, because I think you guys have been down that road. And I know you've struggled because you're like, well, we don't want to go out and say all this salacious, we don't want to have
I'm supposed to be our social media manager. And I was for a while actually in a paid position doing that. And then it wasn't really enough, actually. So I did get another full-time job. And yes, I have always struggled with this issue of I do not want to be a sleazy social media person. And I know that you have to game the system a little bit to get your message in front of the eyeballs.
Well, you're trying to game the algorithm. So it's not people, you're trying to game the algorithm, right?
Well,
Exactly. Now, because I'm doing my own show, and I'm learning, like we barely know what we're doing. And I'm doing my own editing, and thank God for some great software and stuff. But, and we're it's one step above terrible. But the content, what we're talking about, is great, but the rest is one step above terrible, in my view. Maybe I'm being hard on myself, but anyway, whatever. That is, but even I will get in there okay, do a headline that has a juxtaposition, and I've so I've tried to toe that line really carefully, and I've got a little team of consultants. I've got some mental health professionals, I've got lawyers, I've got ethics people that I consult with. And sometimes what ChatGPT says I should make a headline, I'm like, And
ChatGPT is studying what works.
Yeah, exactly.
If we start on ChatGPT again, we're going to be here another 45 minutes.
We won't.
We can't.
But this is the whole, so folks, if you wanna continue to support this exploration, this discovery, and these kind of roundtable discussions where we get to sit around and talk about this stuff, yeah, became a contributor to Seek Safely. I said that's everybody, and that's illuminates the role we're playing is we're going to host offerings that provide people real tools and value, and the proceeds, we'll take a little bit to make sure we can keep doing that, but the proceeds will go, I figure I raised a little over $2 million for Warner and his educational institution. I'm like, okay, I know something about how to do that. So how do I now do that for something that I think is a little bit better and worthwhile? So, and is impactful to the industry that I love as a whole. So, can I say a little tiny bit about the summit?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm excited about, part of why we're getting a late start on the summit this year is I couldn't land on a theme. I wanted a theme that's not all about the pain, because there's so much out there. And honestly, that's what the algorithms are pushing, right? And that's when I first met your mom, and she was talking about like, gosh, I'm just, I'm kind of really tired of telling this story of how my daughter died, as to get eyes. Like, I want to talk about more than that. I want to talk about what happened that happened. I want to talk about the nuances of the field. I want to talk, she wants to have a way bigger conversation. And that's true with virtually everybody. Serendipity over a little bit culty. Like, as you move through your own recovery and healing and waking up, as it were, to the whole picture, you do. So I was really excited this year, like literally just hit me one day. I'm like, building solutions. So, the tagline is collective solutions for safer self-help, and we're going to focus in on accountability. Jean's going to host that little section. We're going to talk about how can we not just help pass this legislation that Seek Safely has been advocating, and so close. We'll get a whole update on that. Like, so close. The first consumer protection laws in the United States that are aimed particularly at the self-help and wellness industry. Like, that's a massive accomplishment, and it's really close, and it's been years and years and years in the making. So that's one level of accountability. But there's a whole bunch of others as well. Chris Shelton, he's one of our partners in this summit, and he's going to be talking to us about this model that is really a culmination of 10 years of his own recovery. And he's got some really cool things to say about how we can just strengthen our laws a little bit on what actually constitutes coercion. Because right now, pretty much, if somebody isn't directly threatening your life, like gun to your head, knife to your throat kind of level, strangulation does qualify for anyone out there that knows that reference from my landmark world. But anyway, if somebody's not threatening your life, it's not coercion. But we know that's not true.
Yeah.
We're seeing it all over. So we're going to talk about that. And then education, just the value and importance. John Atack's going to join us. He's really close to having a program that he developed for primary school kids, 11-year-olds, 5th graders, on how to really determine undue influence, how to spot it, how to notice it. Like, imagine that our kids growing up, Jean, your kids are in that age bracket, and they know they're growing up in this internet world. So anyway, there's so many people that are actually doing some really cool stuff that is about solutions, as it were, or making the world better. And so that's what our summit's going to be about this year. And I'm just like, ever since that hit me, I'm really excited. And right now we're out, inviting, we have several people that have said yes to participate in it one way or the other, but we're inviting more, and not just for the summit. The summit for me is a kickoff of a whole kind of level of partnership and collaboration with people in these fields, talking about, okay, all right, we know it's got to be better. We know we want to make it safer. How do we do it?
You bet. You bet.
How do we do it?
Yeah.
And we want you, everybody listening, we want you to be there, tuning in with us, chiming in. Seek Week, you can be talking in the live chats there, and the summit, you'll be able to chat in. We're going to have roundtable open discussions. So we want to, it's like, we don't have all the answers, like those of us that are in this, but they're out there collectively. What we can create is incredible. That's what I'm excited about. It's like, really, I think my headache's going away.
And that's the thing. If you're listening to this, that means you are part of our community. That means you're invested in these issues on some level. If you know who I am, if you know who Jean is, if you know who Ann is, if you know who any of Sarah Nippy, if you know who any of these folks are, it's not the case that we are the content creators and you're the audience. It's us, the community, and we highly value you, and we would love for you to have an active voice. We think of ourselves as an advocacy organization, sure, but also, a source of education and involvement and a point of contact, because we're trying to actually reduce, like, there's a school of psychotherapy called person-centered therapy that really forms the basis of what I do as a therapist, and it's predicated upon, it's all that Carl Rogers stuff. It's predicated upon kind of reducing the power differential in the therapy relationship. And there's a reason why I'm into it, right? It's because, if you notice the way I write, I rarely write about it's us and you. It's we, right? So get involved. If you can hear my voice right now, I'm talking to you. And that's probably a great place to wrap up for tonight.
Well, thank you, Anne, for joining us. Thank you, Glenn, for helping me along.
You're a good friend and podcast partner of many years, yes.
But y'all can't see, she's been muting herself and coughing. So
I'm muting myself to cough every once in a while. So
Jean Brown is a hero tonight. You guys don't even know. You guys don't even know.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Stay. Alrighty.
awesome.
Thank you guys so
everybody.
much.
Ciao, ciao.